Oh, man. Thank you. Kirk Whalum, yeah, buddy. Kirk Whalum. I'm going to take this off here. Thank you for that. Thanks, man. It is impossible for a speaker to answer that. Of all the things you have heard and I have heard over the last few days, however articulate and lucid they may have been, nothing approaches in lucidity and meaning what Kirk just played for us. And that's the subject we're going to take on today. American music, the great river of American music, with a special concentration on that piece of that wonderful river, that little tributary or channel we call soul, but more largely about what American music is and what it means to us. Anything I say will be banal and fatuous compared to everything that these folks will play for you, but I will take advantage of the moment to speak to make two extremely audacious, controversial, and aggressive claims. The first is a claim I made yesterday, if any of you were here for my talk on the mystery of mastery, and that is that of all the things that the human mind can do, fall in love, fall out of love, care for children, care for dogs, vote for Barack Obama, vote for Donald Trump, of all the astonishing things the human mind is capable of convincing itself of, by far the most astonishing single thing that the human mind ever does is to take sound and turn it into music, and then take music and turn it into meaning. Think about what's involved in that. Sound is just the vibrations in air. That's how music begins, right? It's just equations, it's quavers, it's movement in air. We can understand it mathematically, we can analyze it mathematically, but it doesn't come to us as vibration, it doesn't come to us as quadratic equations, it comes to us as music. It comes to us as the highest and most beautiful of all the art forms we know. No, it's not true that I am in any way a distinguished musician. I am the one thing you can be if you're not a distinguished musician, and that is a loud musician. So I will claim that. But think about that, how we make sound into music. And then we do something, naturally, everyone in this room does it. We do something even more astounding. We make music into meaning. There's not a person in this room, I feel sure, who doesn't make the emotional map of their lives according to the music that they love. If you ask somebody, who are you? They can tell you more quickly who they are by telling you the music that they loved at 12, at 16, at 26, at 36. It's usually the same music, because the music we hear as teenagers gets into our bones. But we make the map of our lives according to music. I did an occasion with the Orchestra of St. Luke, wonderful classical band in New York City last year, where it was just the Schubert Octet, wonderful piece of chamber music, of Viennese chamber music from the early part of the 19th century. And I spoke interstitially as these amazing musicians played, and I spoke about how Schubert had changed my life, how first date I ever went on with my wife was to impress her by taking her to hear Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau sing, about how proud I was to go with my musician son now to hear Schubert. Schubert and my life are entangled, and that was true of everybody in the room, and it was true, I'm sure, of everyone in this room. We take music and we turn it into meaning, and the meanings of music are the meanings of our lives. Now I'll make a second, even more audacious, but I'm convinced even truer claim, and that is that of all the art that was made around the world in the last century, of all the amazing painting and drawing, composition, writing, in every language and in every place, the most important contribution to the human spirit was made by American music in the 20th century. I believe that to be true. Think about it. Think about it. Think about that great rush, that great river of sound and therefore of meaning that began with the African American experience. Whose impulse comes out of Black American music, but then spread to so many places, to so many styles, and to so much incomparable richness. Think of the way that the music rooted in the blues found its home for coming up first to turn into the amazing complexities of jazz, then hybridizing itself into forms of theater music, of the American popular song, the astonishing American songbook, which is shared around the world, both in the works of everyone from U.B. Blake to Irving Berlin. It takes on that Jewish admixture of Broadway wit and pizzazz. Then think about how that same river, imagine it that way, rushes and moves on to give us the high art music of bebop and of cool music, as every bit as complex as concert music, demanding the same kind of intense scrutiny that we give to Schoenberg and Weber. And that's that same river of American music. And then think about how it becomes spiritualized and sanctified in the extraordinary accomplishments of gospel. And then think about how gospel, in turn, becomes secularized once again in the work of a figure who we're going to be talking about a lot, a true genius, Ray Charles, and how Ray Charles takes the sanctified, the sacred music of gospel, makes it secular and even at times sexual music in soul, and then that music, that secular and sexual music, becomes sanctified and sacred again as it becomes the natural music of the great adventure and the great moral crusade of the civil rights movement. At every moment in the history of the world in the past 100 years, American music is right at its center. We can't imagine our experience without imagining American music. And it's uniquely accessible to everyone. Wherever you go in the world, I lived in France for many years, and French hip-hop is the language, is the music of the Parisian street, far more than the older music of the ballade. Anywhere you go in the world, if you play something from that amazing river, if you offer a little piece of that water, at once incredibly clear and beautifully complexly muddy, of American music, you will immediately be engaged in the life of that place and that culture and that civilization, no matter how far removed it may seem from America. Oh, American music is the thing, the great cultural accomplishment of the past 100 years. Does it have one thing in common? I think it does. I think it does. One special emotional quality, one special sympathetic tendency, sympathetic tenor. I think it does. I'm not a political writer primarily, but I'll say a political thing here. I think that what all of that music, and I haven't even begun to discuss the way that the music of the Scotch and the Irish turned into country music, and then how a figure like Ray Charles made it apparent to the surprise of his own listeners how much country music and the blues, how much country music and soul music belong to the same discourse, to the same fabric, not to two different stories that were being told by two different peoples. They were the same story and the same music told two different ways. What all of that music has in common is its enormous power of empathy. If there's one thing that the soul of American music, it's the expressive power of empathy. It's expressed in everything from the way Kirk was playing for us a moment ago, in the amazing vocalese, in the insistence on the human sound of the instrument. I often think, Kirk, about the invention of the saxophone in the 19th century, when it was invented in France, primarily as a band instrument, as a military band instrument, and as an orchestral instrument, as an additional color in the palette of the symphony orchestra, and how great musicians like Kirk have made it the single most powerful expressive instrument since the invention of the violin. They make that statement true. It's the single most powerful instrument for individual expression, for everybody from Lester Young to Frankie Trumbauer and on and on and on. The saxophone. Well, the saxophone didn't have that sound before Americans took it up and gave it that sound, made it that vehicle for personal expression. And what that vehicle for personal expression means is it has the capacity to inspire us by its empathy. Empathy for suffering, empathy for lost love, empathy for common jubilation, empathy for struggle, empathy for moving forward, empathy for other human beings. I don't think it was any error that Donald Trump had a very hard time finding a single American musician to play at his inauguration, because American music is about the power of empathy. And any politics that deprive us of the power and meaning of empathy is a politics that lies far outside that beautiful river of American sound. Having said that, let's talk to some American musicians about American music. Would you welcome, please, Kirk, first of all? Clint, would you come up and join us? This is Clint Holmes, singer, performer. Maybe I'll take the middle seat here. Okay. I think they're wanting me to do that. I'll whisk this around. Let's talk a bit. Both of you have played. It's one of the things that's fascinating when you read your bios, you look at your CVs, listen to you. You've played an amazing number of genres. Neither of you has been compartmentalized by one kind of music rather than another.
They try.
Do they try? Let's talk about that.
Try.
You've done cabaret, Broadway, jazz. You've done soul. You've done art jazz, the kind you sit and listen to, and you've done pop, one of the probably the most widely listened to sax solo of the past 25 years on Whitney Houston's record that Kirk played. Tell me a bit about both of you, where you began, and the first things that stirred and moved you and said, I want to spend my life as a musician.
Absolutely. Age before beauty, I think you should.
What? I think I got you.
Yeah, we do this all the time, so we're used to it.
Well, for me, I come from a family of musicians, of singers, and my mom was an opera singer, my dad was a jazz singer.
Here's a question I want to ask you.
Yes.
How did they meet?
Oh, boy. Okay, so my dad was in the United States Army, World War II, stationed in England. And my mom was singing opera with the Covent Garden Opera Company. But her home was in Bournemouth. So my dad was in Southampton, England, stationed there. And at that time, the troops were segregated, right? So they wanted to do a USO evening for the black troops. And they had trouble getting women to come dance with them and sing with them. So my mom volunteered to sing for those troops.
Your dad was African American?
My dad was African American. Sorry, I didn't make that clear. Yeah, my dad was African American. My mom was white. So my mom volunteered to sing at this USO evening for the black troops, which made her a rebel I mean, the stories are amazing. And they met that night.
Stories about her family.
The stories about her, the lack of acceptance from her family, and the lack of, ultimately, of acceptance from my dad's family once they came to America, which is why we ended up living in a town of 500 people outside Buffalo, New York, where we were the only anything. I talk about my sister and I. It wasn't so much, oh, they're black, let's not accept them. It was more like, what are they? It really was like that.
Right.
But musically speaking, when I was very young, looking for a place to fit in this little town that we lived in, I asked my first grade teacher if I could sing. And there were 8 kids in the class, and she said, sure. And I sang, Here Comes Peter Cottontail. I actually remember this. Here comes Peter Cottontail, right? And at the end of it, all 8 kids applauded.
And you knew you had
and
a mission.
I went, okay, got it now. And that was it, man. And
let me stop you 1 second, Clint. I'm being given a technical clue here.
Yes.
School's out.
Switch mics.
Switch mics.
Not you. You hold
All right. Well, that one's yours. That's the singer's mic.
Oh, okay.
That's the singer's
so I'll
mic.
start
Great.
all over again.
But that's okay. Now, in your household growing
Yes.
up, what was there? All kinds of music on? Was there opera, classical music?
There was much more jazz. Much more, because my dad was a jazz. So the end of that story, the beginning of our family, was that my dad thought that he would come back to America. He sang with a man named Leon Bibb before he went to the service. And he thought he would come back after the war to America with this beautiful white opera singing wife, and he would get back to singing jazz with the guys, and she would have this amazing opera career, and that would be the future of the Holmes family. What happened,
The singing Holmes.
The singing Holmeses, right? We were the original Von Trapps.
Right.
But what happened, of course, was that when they moved back, it was to Buffalo, where my dad's mother lived, and they moved into a ghetto, a black ghetto called the Willard Park Housing Project, where my mother was the only white person. Okay, so that became problematical. Plus the fact that my dad's mom was not very happy about the whole thing. So my dad said the safer way to do it would be to move to a little town where everything would be safe, but there would be nothing. Nothing. Farnham, New York, 500 people. I looked it up a couple of weeks ago. There's 489 now. Yeah. So that's where we lived. We moved out there, and of course, then it became my dad had to work 3 jobs because my sister was born, and so there's 2 kids, and my mother had to take care of us, and they went into survival mode for basically the rest of their marriage. So there was no more opera, there was no more jazz, except, of course, my dad would go into Buffalo on the weekends to hear the jazz, and introduced me to the whole idea when I was 12, and there was a Sunday afternoon jam session at the Colored Musicians Club in Buffalo, and he took me, and I walked into that place, and first of all, everybody knew my dad's name. You have to remember, we lived in this town where Dad basically got up in the morning, drove to Buffalo, worked, came home, threw his lunch pail on the corner. He was also the janitor at our little church. We walked into that club, everybody knew, Eddie, hey, what's up, hey, Eddie? And I'm like, oh, Eddie, that's my dad, right? And he would be giving skin to everybody and introduced me, and then the cats would play, and then my dad would get up and scat sing, and I'm like, what world is this? But that's what made me want to be a part of that world.
It was the enormous social warmth and the feeling of belonging. It's another version of that empathy. Can you top that story, Kirk?
Not at all. No way. Absolutely not. But I live into that story, and I empathize with that story. Because actually, this was a moment of clarity for me. I mean, what you just stood there and said about empathy, it really sort of ties together some things, my whole life really. It ties together my musical life for sure, but I hadn't thought of it in those terms or in that term. But my first memory really was of being in that Black Baptist church that my dad pastored. And
what town are we in?
Memphis, Tennessee.
Memphis, okay.
And hearing
not a really musical town.
Not at all. Not a lot of music there. I mean, Elvis is from. It's still, that it's one of those sort of touch points for especially black people in Memphis. Like you say, where are you from? Say, I'm from Memphis. Oh man, Elvis, and you go.
Not only.
Yeah. So, but him too, though. I mean, now that I'm reconciled now with all of that, I love Elvis too. But what I heard was I detested it, first of all. but I heard this. You notice I started with this one note over when I was over there. I love the Lord. He heard my cry. I see a couple of black people going, So the statement, you could say the idea was stated right then. I love the Lord. He heard my cry. Wow. I don't know what just happened. This guy got a little emotional about that. But, so this is good, actually. So then the answer would be everybody. I love, Kyla, you can help me. The Lord, I still remember distinctly. So every syllable is sort of spread out then, and it has this other melody. Heard my cry. And then the person who started would then sing another phrase, and the same thing would happen. So again, this context, this is the essence of what all of that music is. This is the very essence of it, but I rejected it at first because it reminded me of the subjugation and the oppression. The stories, and it reminded me that my grandmother, like my friends, by then were segregated, so my little white friend's mother would pick him up and talk about his grandmother and, what she did and what she retired from or whatever. My grandmother was a domestic. And so she cleaned people's toilets, And so that music, that expression, the essence of a culture boiled down to just these notes, it took me into this place of shame. Right? Now, as j'ai habité en France aussi, I used to live in Paris as well. So now, after having lived in Europe, and now I've just finished doing a record in England about, 2 months ago, and I get back to that essence as now there, you could say it's the diaspora of the artistic, musical, sonic diaspora of that empathy.
Absolutely, but tell us, yes. So eloquent.
Sorry about that.
No, on the contrary. Thank you.
That was unexpected.
Thank you for that. Emotion is the rarest thing at an Ideas Festival and the most important. What I'm fascinated though, Kirk, because that music at that moment in your life was still music of shame in some way, because it represented subjugation, oppression. What was the first music you heard that was music for you of pride and possibility?
You could say really that it was Ray Charles. It was Ray, but it was also Aretha, and because we saw them on TV, right? So. We were like, oh, wow, that's us, and people, the whole audience was white, and because, basically black people couldn't be in that place, right?
When we would watch television and there'd be someone like Sinatra or someone like that on, or the Beatles or somebody that my dad would point to Nat King Cole. He'd say that man is way cooler than Frank Sinatra. That man is way cooler. And he always pointed me in that direction. And I don't know. I'm this half black, half white kid living in this town. I don't know. That was the direction of pride for me.
So what your dad did really was like the apologetic of black culture. Again, it's the dynamic that into which we black people in Memphis did not accept this Elvis because he had appropriated what belonged to us.
And taken, and taken it. Just a quick pedantic footnote. I think Nat Cole is indeed one of the great, and this amazing story is one of the great figures that we don't perhaps appreciate enough, because he's not only one of the great vocal figure, but he's one of the great jazz pianists. If you hear Nat Cole and Lester Young, for me, it's like it's the top of it. Nat Cole, we can't pay enough attention to Nat Cole, and I think that's true. So you were saying, so soul music, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, the soul music of the 50s and 60s. Clint, you came at it a slightly different angle, right? Because you were never that really was never the music you
That's not what I
chose.
listened to,
Right, yeah.
that I chose, I suppose, or that chose me. You know, it was jazz. You know, it was Nat, it was Louis Armstrong. You know, and it became as I grew up a little bit, it became Ella. And it became
the songbook. The
songbook that I listened to, and it was interesting because as a young musician, making a living, trying to make a living at being a singer because I didn't know how to do anything else.
Right.
The last thing that is accepted is to walk in somewhere and do jazz, you know, because they just they don't want to hear it. So you have to find some sort of avenue to be successful commercially and still have some part of your soul satisfied.
Right.
And that's been a journey of mine for my whole career, really. Honestly, still is kind of.
Right, finding that middle,
finding
ground.
that, because if someone, the Lord dropped down and said, you can do whatever you want and everything will be okay, I would just go sing jazz. I would travel, I'd follow Kirk. I'd carry his suitcase and I would walk wherever he was and say, me too. I mean, seriously, I mean, I would just sing jazz because that's when I'm satisfied, that's when I'm inspired, and that's when I think I'm at my best, is when I'm doing that. You know?
Like Johnny Hartman.
And Joe Williams, who lived in Las Vegas, and people like that.
But that leads to the next question I wanted to ask is, unfortunately, tragically, but realistically, that isn't an opportunity that really most musicians get to have, which is to do or sing music that means the most to them. And you end up doing a lot of crossover. Kirk, you've done that. We were talking about it at the beginning. How do you relate to that? It's the work we do to make a living and support our families and all of those things too. Sure. But do you find that you can find in pop meaningful means of expression of?
Yeah, I will say my personal take on that is less and less.
Really, huh?
Yeah, in other words, it is possible, and I was definitely doing it, you know. It's funny, like the whole Whitney thing, there was 8 years of my life that was kind of a detour, because again, I was...
Explain to people who might not know, you were playing with...
I was touring with Whitney Houston from '89 to about '97.
Or the high point of her
Right,
career.
that was the big one. And in fact, I remember distinctly living in Paris in 1990 and being on the subway, and I Will Always Love You, you know, had come out, and I remember this French girl with her, you know, her headphones, les casques, they call them, you know, on her head, and she's saying, "Hey, we always love you." You know, and she couldn't hear how loud she was singing, right? And so I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. And then when it got to the sax solo, she started singing the sax solo. At this point, I couldn't resist. I'm like, you know. But so in other words, I think that there was...
Did she believe you?
Did she run?
Mais peut-être non. Maybe not. But you know what? I think probably, because I had kids, you know, we were taking kids to school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so I think probably that it's getting less and, well, there's two streams. One is a hyper creative stream that is sort of out of necessity because of the fact that the revenue streams of music are now, you know, dissipating, you know, because people share music and they don't so much buy music anymore, right? So then we have to sort of carve out a way to, you know, to make a good living. So then I think that music ends up being very creative and very sort of dialed in and everything to what you're talking about. But then there's this other music that's sort of in the mainstream that's highly sort of underwritten, as it were, by the corporate machine that sells things right into the middle of culture. You know, who are the big artists with the hit songs, and these are the things that we're going to invest in because this, you know, it's a no-brainer. What producers will bring us the hits? And it's the content, the empathy is almost non-existent.
Even I'm told that even the musicians are often non-existent. I have a son who's a good guitar player and was thinking of making a living as a guitar player.
Well, bless him, at least he's a guitar player because that's probably the only instrument that gets added to, the live instrument that gets added to those.
But how did you feel about Kendrick Lamar when you started hearing him infuse jazz behind what he was doing?
I think I shed a tear. I mean, just to see what he's doing with all the jazz elements and all the, you know, choir and all that. You know?
It's like music coming back to life. Because what I was going to say is that so much now is just computerized and digitized that there's no room for session musician, even
Absolutely.
from
And I have to say, I'm seriously distracted right now because I'm sitting there looking at take 6 over here.
I know, but we're about to bring. Well, come on up. So
Sorry.
we want to keep talking about the nature of American music, but particularly we want to kind of focus in a little bit on Ray Charles and soul music. And we have the great gift of having one of the world's great a cappella musical groups, Take 6, joining us right now. Would you welcome them, please?
Yes, indeed.
Take 6. First of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. That clip from, I think, wonderful movie, Ray, raises a question immediately that, just we can jump right into, and that's the relationship between soul music, if you like, music of Ray Charles particularly, and politics. And because that's all about Ray Charles sort of getting politicized at one moment in his life, where he's thinking to himself, my music is my music, and it isn't part of this struggle, and then saying, no, my music's right in the middle of this struggle. Anybody just jump in with a thought about how that happened, how it continues to happen today? Go ahead, Dave.
I'll start off by saying, hearing the conversation before we came on stage, and how music in general, how we would all, as artists, just love to be free and do whatever we feel like doing. But the genreification of music sort of puts limitations on artists in general, just like it does in life. Limitations that are put there that we're expected to abide by. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it's a thing where after a while, you have to speak to what is. And you have to do what you have to do, and sometimes those lines get blurred. And sometimes in music, with the different genres, sometimes because that's the way they sell music now, you have to stay in your lane, so to speak, in order to make a living, just like they try to do politically in society, try to make you stay in your lane. Our job as artists is to push those limits, push back and say, it could be more. It should be more.
That's fascinating. Talk a bit, if you would, then anybody, as I say, just jump in, about the way that your group, Take 6, began, I'm right, in college as a gospel group, right? And then found new ways, forward, sideways.
Well, yeah, the funny thing that he's saying is we did start out as a gospel group. We started at a Christian college in Huntsville, Alabama.
Seventh-day Adventist.
Seventh-day Adventist. And we started out pretty much as a quartet singing almost barbershop style quartet music. And then Mark Kibble joined the group and started arranging, making it a quintet. So we started adding, a note here and there, which basically gave us a jazzier sound, especially when we added a sixth member. Now, to kind of drill down on what you're asking, here's the thing that I think is really important, and that has worked for Take 6. We've always just done what it is we know how to do. I think that there's an authenticity that everybody up here has. We would love to do all these other things, but when it gets right down to it, what we do best is what we do, and I think that the music ends up finding a place. And that's what has happened with Take 6. When we first signed our first record deal, it was with the country music division of Warner Brothers Records.
The country music.
The country music division. It was in Nashville, Tennessee. We did a showcase there in Nashville and invited all of the gospel music labels. None of them showed up. Unbeknownst to us, Jim Ed Norman, who was the president of Warner Brothers there, came to the showcase. There were maybe 6 people at our showcase, which lets you know you should always be ready. So he came and literally...
there were 5 in him.
5 in him. And he came probably halfway through.
Right.
Because he had heard of this group. And he was hoping that it was the group that he had heard from years before. So he comes in and literally says, I would love to sign you guys. I have no idea what I would do with this music, but I love it. So I think that was the start, at least for us, of being in a situation with somebody who had foresight and said to us, do what you do. And I think from there, the story has been written, because they expected maybe 25, 30,000 copies to be sold of that first album. And it's been well over, I think, 2 million now.
2 million copies, yes, sold of it. So it was a good bet. That's part of the legacy of Ray Charles, though, isn't it? When we think about Ray Charles, is exactly the crossover of gospel, soul, and country music.
Yeah, and here's the great thing about Ray is if you look through his discography, he's done albums in all different genres, but he's always Ray Charles. He's not trying to sing like somebody else. He's not trying to, now I'm going to be smooth jazz, or I'm going to try to be country. He is Ray Charles, which again, to me, goes back to what I said about just be authentically you. Because when you do that, people gravitate towards that, and they know you're being real.
No, absolutely.
I was going to say also to your first question, wherever there are major resources, there are going to be some people vying for power. Wherever there's major money, there's going to be somebody trying to control that. Wherever there is influence, there's going to be someone trying to control that and trying to control the narrative. And I think what you spoke to, artists have a voice to be able to share what they share, but it has a certain influence when it goes out. And I think that those entities that want to control that narrative, you're going to see some push and pull on that because they want you to sing what it is that's most important to them. We've experienced that. And they also, they want to utilize the influence that you have to, again, push that, whatever that narrative is. But artists have to realize that you have a voice. And what you sing about, oftentimes, especially if it's on the edge, if it's speaking to very pertinent issues, you're gonna catch pushback. You're gonna catch pushback about the styles that you do, the message that you're talking about. And so that struggle of wanting to do the music that we wanted to do and having to fight back against what people want you to sing about, what they feel like makes money, and what they feel like that narrative should be, we've had to balance, push back again, step out.
Could you give us an example of what you're talking about?
You know, when we first came out, at least when I first got in the group and I replaced Mervyn Warren in 1991, the big issue—
You're a newcomer.
I'm a newcomer— was gospel music versus Christian music.
Yeah.
And essentially, gospel music represented black gospel, and Christian represented white gospel. Also, there was contemporary music versus traditional music. And we were caught against that conversation at the time that I
in both those genres, like contemporary gospel versus traditional gospel.
We didn't fit into any of those.
None, right.
And I remember one time when we were going to perform on a particular award show, and we had been lined up to do it, and they essentially, just as we were about to take the last couple of steps to prepare for the performance, we were told, you know what, you all are kind of considered too out there. And we're like, well, we've kind of always been gospel. How are we considered to be out there? Well, you know, you're kind of jazzy, and we're not really sure that we want you to perform on this show. But another artist had just released a secular project, and they were the headliner on the show. And we saw that kind of the conversation, as it were. And that was one of the first conversations in political situations that I was exposed to as a newcomer. And I had to learn along with, I guess from these guys, that's the kind of environment that you're going to be speaking, that your voice is going to speak to. And that's what I started out with. You know, it's gone
Even farther.
yeah, a lot further from there.
Yeah,
So that's just to speak to what you're saying. Artists have a voice that you do have to use responsibly, and you also have to recognize that voice is going to make a very specific difference in what you choose to sing and how you choose to sing and the style you choose to sing.
Absolutely. Anyway, everybody,
I need to
come
say
in.
something
Come,
about
please.
Take Six and Gowdy. the artist Gaudi. Mosaic, is that the thing with all the different stones?
Yeah.
So the important thing is the essence, right? So when we hear a blues singer, a serious traditional blues singer or gospel, again, especially black gospel from that era, we hear the essence just grabs you by the throat because it is the most powerful thing. It is you being you, but in this case, it's you representing, you receiver and giver, I guess, transmitter of this gift, representing the one who has given the gift, right? The giver of the gift. This essence is powerful. But then you think of Gaudi, right? So the art is complex, it's multifaceted, it's sophisticated, right? So, as in take 6, right? So you get all these different harmonies weaving in and out, and there's this complex, progression that's going, if you go in and study it and you unpack it, you're like, well, this one song is a whole semester in somebody's class, in harmony, right? So it's complex, it's sophisticated, it's just so incredible. But again, like Gaudi, if you back up this mosaic, you see all these little pieces, but the aggregate essence of it is the same, and it's impactful, and it connects us again to our ancestors. It connects us to the struggle. It connects us to that thing that happened that, again, we all had to overcome when we were coming up as kids, like the shame. It's like the stages of grief, You go through that, and then you realize, wait a minute, this is actually the most important thing. This is the coolest, as you said, this is the coolest thing right here.
When we talk about the word soul, what I have learned, and maybe somebody will disagree with this, but what I've learned for me is soul is the total mosaic, the total feeling that the audience and the artist share. Soul, when I was growing up, James Brown was soul. You know what I mean? And that intimidated me because I couldn't touch that. You know what I mean? As an artist, I couldn't touch that. But then as I grew up, I realized that soul was the feeling that emanates from us to the audience, and then from us to the audience, to our listening audience. Anybody resonate with that?
Yeah, what I was going to say was, one thing we've learned over the years is no matter what style you jump in and out of, what package you're coming out of this week, what an audience instantly recognizes if you're real or not.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. If you are a fake rapper, they'll call it out. If you're fake jazz, they'll call it out. If you're a fake gospel, oh Jesus, they'll call it out. People, there's something authentic.
They catch me when I try that. Yeah.
There's something authentic that catches from soul to soul. Just like when you're an audience member and somebody's on stage and they're unsure, you're nervous for them. There's something about their experience when it's real to them that is real to you. And I think we've all experienced it. And that has taught us, after all of these years, to be real, come from a place of authenticity, or don't even go there.
It's a question I ask. I make my living, I wish I made my living singing, but I make it talking, right? Going place to place and talking. And what you're saying is absolutely true for talking too, right? People may not walk out saying, oh, I could pass a pop quiz on what he was talking about, but they know absolutely if you were talking from the heart or if you were talking from a tablet, if you're in that way too. How do you, it's everybody, it's also a gig, it's work you do. How do you keep it authentic night after night with a group like this, given that you're exhausted, you're tired, and you've done it, 4 times already that week?
I think we're blessed that we have a built-in checks and balances system. Anybody gets outside of what's real, 5 guys will quickly. So you're this guy now, huh?
We're also married.
The ultimate checks and balances.
That's the reality check right there.
Right.
And the fact is, I will say for myself only that I don't do that, that I fail at that. That there are many nights when I come off stage and I go like, yeah, I'll try again tomorrow.
But you all know. I think what I've learned is you take it with you, whatever it is. Yeah. Whatever. I remember the night my mom died. I was in New York. My mom was in Las Vegas, and we got the call about 2 hours before us go on stage. Wow. And I sat there thinking, what am I going to do? And I was with my wife and the director of the show, and he said, take it with you, man. Just take it with you. Not to go out and make a maudlin speech. Just take whatever emotion that is on stage with you. And I did, and it was okay. And again, to what I would said, people know when it's real. People know when you're being honest or when
But
you're
that
faking
speaks to the mosaic as well, though.
Yep.
I mean, there are times where it's a melancholy experience. There are times where we're just really hyped up. Times where we're just sad. But if it's real, it's real. You know what I mean?
So there's kind of an appropriate transparency that's got to take place. That's challenging to do because you're up on a stage with a whole bunch of people that could be judges. But when you're able to be transparent, even if you don't tell that whole story, there are people who are in that place who are going to connect with you because they feel what it is. Yeah, they experienced loss and they came to your concert. They feel it right away, and you find that you'll connect with that audience. And however it is, even if you're tired and worn out, somebody is connected with you like, I feel you. Thank you for playing anyway.
Yeah, that's a beautiful phrase, appropriate transparency. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, that's a good one. You know, for me personally, we have been lucky enough to be able to do music in many genres because of the fact that what we do is harmonic, and harmony is in everything. So that almost enables us to do any kind of music. And we've tried a whole bunch. But where it gets real for me, every single time we get on stage, no matter how I'm feeling personally in the background, when I come out there, there is a joy that happens when we do what we do. That happens no matter how we feel. And it somehow, transcends amongst us, and then it gets out to the audience. And we might have come from a 20-hour trip, and we're just completely exhausted, but we still get to say what we can say. We still get to pass to the audience our experience of love and our experience of joy, and that connects. It has never failed to connect. And I would dare say that Ray, he was always himself. When he brought what he brought, you knew Ray was going to bring the real deal feeling. I know Clint, and he is the same way. I know Kirk, he is the same way. Every single time you're going to feel what it is that's in their heart. And that's what connects. And we've been blessed enough to be able to do that. And I'm just grateful that I'm actually back here with these guys that I love so much.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention in my overly emotional intro was one of the things that fascinates me about Ray Charles, too. I got to see him do. He traveled with a big band, a big swing band for years and years. He was one of the last musicians to do that, to make the connection between the jazz tradition and the soul tradition manifest every night when he was out there with that very expensive big band to keep going that he didn't need to have to get his audience to come to him. He needed it.
He needed to have it.
You know, let me share this. We actually recorded with Ray back when we did join the band. I think it was 94, 95. And I got to meet him and experience what he was like when he went into his studio. Ray was real. He was real. We asked him to do one song. He said, "You know what? I can't do that song. I can't do that one. So you go ahead and you write one. You write another one, and I promise you I'll do that." And we wrote a song.
He was tough.
He was real tough. He said if he didn't want to do it, he wasn't gonna do it. So we gave him the song to sing. He said he loved the song, and then he said, "Okay, you guys do what you do. You give it to me, and I'll take it, and I'm gonna give you back what you gonna get from me." I was literally in his studio. And he was running his studio, all over, running the tape machine, knew where everything was. He did everything by himself with the lights off. And was just absolutely amazing how he just knew and then he told me to leave. He told me to just get out, do what you do. And he sent back the magic. Ray was just like that. He, when his heart is in it, we knew we were going to get the best from him. And so I would dare say, whenever you do something, when you put your heart in it, people are going to feel it. Right. That's what it's all about.
That's problematic in a way now. I really do think that, we're in an epoch where I leave the house trying to forget what I just saw on the news, you know? So in other words, and I walk on stage and I'm having this dialogue with myself saying, man, these people here, you don't know where they are. You don't know where they stand, man. So you need to be cool and try to play. But the problem is that go all the way back down to the root. On dit en espagnol, decimos los raíces. You say les racines, the roots of this music. You go all the way back down there and you trace it all the way back up, and every single step, it was addressing something. It was responding to something. And so when we get to the point where we're no longer allowed to address those things that mean the most to us, and by the way, those things, most of them have a social justice core to them. Like, I don't want my grandmother to have to do what she's doing, and et cetera. You know, I see this guy here, I know he was smart in school, but the system that he walked out of that school into got him down. And now here I am, I'm gonna be 60, he's gonna be 60, I got a job, he has not had a job since, you know, he was 20. And so those things play loud in your head, and so how do you turn that off and just make music? Again, that's what the whole smooth jazz thing, that's why we all struggle with that. When even the name of it, we're like, what is that, you know? And then at the same time, you're happy to make a living, but wow, I mean, no, I need to be able to respond to those things.
It's smooth jazz, this is a prejudice, I guess, but it's like the only kind of jazz ever invented without soul.
By definition.
Yeah.
And without soul, I'll use your word, Adam, and I'd say without empathy, like the idea
Don't
is to
you
respond.
think, and this is corny, I'm about to say it's corny, but I believe it, unfortunately. In a time like this, where things are so divided and there's so much anger, that what we offer is more than a distraction. It's a distraction, but it's more than that. It's a distraction that can actually feed unity and feed creativity and feed what a lot of us feel we are fighting to maintain.
Absolutely. Democracy gets built from the ground up. It gets built from creative communion among like-minded people. It doesn't get imposed from the top down.
Yeah, a couple things come to my mind. In about 30, 40 years, it's going to be interesting to look back on this period of time and the previous 8 years and see what kind of music came out from this period.
Yeah.
Did the soul soar despite of, or did it soar because of, you know, politically what's going on right now? And another thing is, I remember about 10 years ago, we did a tour, and we were, for some kind of way, we were bridging Western Germany and Eastern Germany, Eastern Bloc Germany, and one show would be here, and then the other, and we would fall asleep on this bus, and we would kind of go back and forth between the two areas, former areas, and you could instantly know when you woke up where you were, just because of the colors or lack thereof in the city.
In the architecture.
Yeah, and so art reflects society, and it helps, and it uplifts, and it reflects where the soul is. And so it's our job to keep this thing beautiful, no matter what's going on.
So it wasn't corny. It's true.
No, it's true. I could.
But I was going to say, if I could just add this, we were in a pretty red part of the country last night. And during the show, we were just singing about love. Family of Love was the song. And it dawned on me that no matter what side of the political spectrum that you come down on, everybody loves somebody, loves something. And if we can focus on the things where we have alignment versus being in our heads about the differences that we might have, we continue to focus on that. And that's our job as artists as well, to focus, help the listener, help the audience to focus on the important thing. And it's really about love and where we can connect. We're going to have differences. It's just a fact
Right,
of
and think about
life.
what Dave is saying. When we get up there to sing, people have come to be entertained.
Literally.
They've come from all the same kinds of situations that Kirk was talking about, and we're all talking about. We may have had a bad day. We may have had something going on where we want to be entertained now. And they're coming to see us. So we have an opportunity to shape what's going to happen for the next hour and a half to 2 hours in their lives.
But I was going to say,
You know?
Claude, at the end of the song, everyone. Yeah. It's a standing ovation, no matter who you were, no matter what you believed in.
What you thought you believed.
And it
What
was
you
a-
thought
yeah,
you
it was a
believed
specific
in,
song.
You felt it
Yeah.
because of how we felt it. And everybody, standing ovation, tears. I mean, for us as well. So, I mean,
I could sit up here with this company forever and talk about music, but we're a bit of a sausage party up here right now, and we want to bring in another voice and another crucial part of the story we're talking about this afternoon, and that's Kyla Jade. We have a beautiful video of Kyla Jade doing a piece by that greatest of all soul singers, Aretha Franklin. Kyla, come up and join us, please. Kyla, didn't your folks ever tell you give something in a performance? Don't hold back that way.
Well, you know I'm a church baby, so every time you get up, you have to sing. You have to do your best.
That's fantastic. That's Kyla in The Voice just a month ago or so,
Yes,
and
sir.
doing it too. Been asking everybody this afternoon, what was the first time they heard music that made them know this is the thing I want to do with my life? This is essential to my existence.
I think for me, because I grew up in a household where music was our language, it's what we ate to, what we went to bed to, what we woke up to, how we washed dishes. Our chore list was to songs. My mother kept music in our house. It's literally the language we speak our emotions in. So I think for me, it wasn't coming to a place where I knew music was what I was going to do. It was basically understanding what my language was within the music.
Which dialect of this language that was your natural language
Absolutely.
you were going to speak? Well, that leads me to the next question, which is, you're doing an Aretha Franklin classic there too. That's music now. It's hard for me to believe this because I can remember when it first came out. But that's music that's half a century old now. The original
Absolutely.
version of that too.
It is.
What turned you on to that? What gave you the confidence that you could keep that music alive? It seems because it totally is alive for us.
For me, being on The Voice was already interesting because I am a plus-size African-American woman who, you may not believe it, doesn't sing pop music. I know that's hard for you. So early on, I decided to do what music speaks to me. So I think you first have to understand what soul is, and then you have to understand what music is in their separation, and then what they mean together. And for me, soul music was essentially, I think they were talking about the essence of. It is the essence of me, so it is the essence of my language. It's how I live and breathe. So I wanted people to know what music was. And I wanted to sing it, again, the gentleman said, in its truth. Earlier on, Kirk was talking about just where we are as a society, and I was thinking, how do you raise the consciousness of the masses? You tell the truth. And you do that in music, in soul music, because it is already what our consciousness is. You have to go back to it. And that's the problem, is that we don't have experience lived. We haven't experienced anything. So how can you sing from a place you don't know? When I was thinking about sitting on this panel with people who far exceed me in experience, that's the one thing I had to come back to, is that my life is soul music. I've had many opportunities to sing in many different genres. I've struggled, I've gone through, I've persevered, I've done a lot of things. And so it is now a place that I can sing from because it is experience lived. And I think we've lost that with current music. And so when they said, Kyla, we want you to sing something popular, I said, oh, that's nice. I won't be doing it.
What did they mean by something popular?
They wanted me to basically take the top 30 songs on Billboard, what was current, and redo it. And the show is great for that. You take a popular song and you make it your own. Well, the problem was that there was no subject. There was no
That music
heart.
didn't have a subject.
For me,
Right.
it didn't speak from a place that I could go along with. And it could be my church upbringing that, listen, baby, if you can't feel this song, sit down. That was my mother. Listen, Kyla, if this song doesn't mean something, go on and sit down, baby. You see, sit right on down in this front row until it means something to you. And so it was important to me that anytime I touched the microphone, that I sang something that was from my experience lived, so someone else could understand how it felt. Or even if you say, soul music is where you've been. what you've gone through, what you've accomplished. All of that injected rather into the music makes it more memorable, makes it heartfelt, makes it truth, makes it honest. And if you don't sing in honesty, then it's just a pretty song.
Yeah. So did you suggest to them? Did you say to them, "I want to do"?
Oh no, I gave them every song I wanted to sing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm a little old, so you telling me what I'm gonna do probably doesn't work. So they would send me songs, and I'd say, "Oh, this is nice," and then I'd send them back what I was going to sing.
This is what you're going to sing, which
Yeah.
was "Chain of Fools."
No, whatever I felt at the moment.
Yeah.
But this particular song, Blake had never heard it. Blake Shelton was my coach. And
he had never heard Chain of Fools?
No, this wasn't. Now listen, this wasn't Chain of Fools.
Right.
That was Sweet Sweet Baby.
Sweet Baby. I'm sorry.
He had never heard it.
Right.
And I said, well, that's fine,
Right.
So I said, well, let me do it where you can understand it. And I asked the guitar player to come up. I said, I don't need any other instrumentation. I'm just going to sing this song with just me and a guitar.
Right.
And you tell me how you feel when I get done.
Right.
And so halfway through, he said, oh, okay, you win.
It's
Whatever you
surprising
want to
you
do.
never heard the song, though.
I'm not that surprised. A lot of Aretha's catalog, again, it's cultural. She even said, soul music is culture. What was it, actually? I made notes so I wouldn't forget. Hold on, y'all. She said, soul is consistent and it's cultural. It's always going to be there in different flavors and degrees. Mm-hmm. So I think culturally, the songs that people know or respect, maybe Ain't No Way on a good day, but he didn't know her extensive catalog.
The
like
whole
I,
catalog.
Yeah, and then, you get a pass. You sing country, you get a lot of passes.
Yeah, I guess. I guess so. Question, what are you working on now? What recording project do you have in hand now?
I just released my first single last Monday, and thank you. And I wanted to actually tribute Aretha Franklin, so I did Daydreaming.
Huh.
I did. For me, she represents soul music for me. And if you take soul music and you give it its point up here, this is what I feel happened. I feel like she was able to infuse R&B, country if she wanted to, gospel, all of those things, and it all was an umbrella of soul. So one day somebody said, I can sing R&B, I can sing a little country.
Pop too, she could sing
And
Burt
pop,
Bacharach.
Absolutely. I'm riding on the freeway of love. Honey, that was popping. I don't get up.
Yeah.
She had a good wig on and she was in the car singing Freeway. So someone decided, you know what, I can sing all these things, but I can't sing pop, so I'm gonna separate it. Or someone else came and said, well, I'm a little jazzier, but I can't sing gospel. So they separated it. So soul music, someone took all of these forms and made them their own subcategories because they couldn't all do it all under one umbrella. That's what I feel like happened, and it's okay. Sometimes jazz is stronger for others, and gospel is just out of it. It's okay, but all of it goes back to the essence of the reason we sing, the story that you're telling, your life experience. So what I'm trying to do with music now is go back to those moments. If I can, who are the legends? Who are the people coming up? I was recently on tour with Patti LaBelle singing background for her, and I'm an extremely professional person on stage, but singing behind Patti LaBelle, I missed all my cues. At one point,
You're just watching her.
At one point, I was just jumping up and down and screaming, and she said, Kyla, are you ever gonna sing? I was like, I'm sorry. Because I feel like a little black girl when I stand behind her. This is someone, for me, who had paved the way, who taught us what it meant, who was fabulous in the most ridiculous hairstyles and clothes, but you never forgot it. And I was like, this is who I wanna be. But who are the people training those women? Who are the people training these young men to not just be someone with a great song, but someone who has longevity, someone who tells stories years over years, someone who has something to say about the culture that we're in, about the climate that we're in. And so I'm surrounding myself with people. I'm trying to find every old writer because I know they're not doing anything but writing. And
every old writer, you mean all people who were writing music back in the 60s?
The songs that I love.
Right.
The things that when I go through something, I don't necessarily think of, we gonna be all right. Like that doesn't come to me.
Yeah.
But I may go to something else by by Nina Simone, or I may travel back to Ella.
She's becoming more and more important to people in people's imagination.
Isn't it interesting?
Isn't it?
How things come back.
Yeah.
But their music never changed. They were exactly who they were supposed to be. But we are becoming conscious enough to understand that they said something that was needed. Yeah. So that's the kind of music I want to create. I want to go back to songs that last, songs that take you on a journey. That you are angry at that old boyfriend who broke up with you, that you're happy about your life. Every emotion, you should, when you come to my shows, you should feel every emotion. You should be mad at me for a while. You should try to throw your pocketbooks. You should want to take your clothes off. Don't do it. But all of those things should happen because that's the kind of shows we grew up on.
Right. Spiritual, 1 minute, secular.
Kind of, you're just going to be on an emotional roller coaster. Right. You're not going to know what's going on. But that's who I grew up listening to. That's, my mother would have Elvis on, and it was just, I didn't know what was happening. And in the same minute, she'd put on the Spinners, and in the same minute, she would go get an Aretha Franklin record. It was just a montage, a gumbo pot of musical possibilities.
Does hip hop fit into your palette of possibilities?
Into my palette? Oh no, honey, no. I am. First of all, I feel like it is a rhythm that I can't keep up with. It's kind of like, anybody in here can't dance?
Oh, I can't dance? Oh, yeah.
Well, I wasn't going to say people who are not as dark as me, can you dance? I was asking if you can dance. That's how I feel about hip hop. I feel like something is going on around me and I can't figure out what's happening. But I am a fan of progressive hip hop, of people who have something to say. If you have something to say, Kendrick Lamar, and there's a lot of, we are in a society where independent artists are paving the way. That they're not using the same means that you can't just walk into a record label and give them your record and be signed and they'll put you on a tour with someone great. It doesn't happen anymore. And so there are a lot of underground independent artists who are doing phenomenal things and just don't have the opportunities.
Right. Can I ask a question? We don't have much time left, but I've always found, I was once doing a piece about these great chefs in Spain, great crazy molecular chefs, and I said to them, is there anything you've always dreamed of doing that you have never been able to do? I thought, who knows what they'll answer? And they said, instantly, they said, hot ice cream. And I said, hot ice cream? He said, yes, we've always dreamt of making something that would taste like ice cream and look like ice cream, but it was hot. And I've discovered this, every artist has a hot ice cream inside, a dream project that they want to do that's out there. What's your hot ice cream, Kyla?
Well, I'm going to do all my dreams. I have every intention of doing everything. So I would say immediately would be a symphony tour.
Huh, really? Yeah.
I would love to be, I go back, my very first record that I ever bought in Kansas is where I grew up. They had these 10 cents sales. And you can go, I'm an avid reader. I would go and just dig and find every book I could find. My mother would be like, there's nowhere to put these books. But this particular day, they had a crate sale. And there was a crate of records. And the very first one I picked up was a big black girl who looked like me. And it was Ella Fitzgerald's Christmas record.
Oh, yes.
And I took it home and I was like, Mom, she's a big girl like me. And she looks amazing. And she just stood. She stood in one place. And
Ella did. She just stood and she didn't.
And just took you on this journey. And I knew then that's what I wanted. I want, honey, listen, give me the biggest gown. I want to look like a cupcake. And put me on a stage with great lights and let me sing my story. Let me sing my life. And so that is my idea. A symphony tour is going to happen, but it would make me very happy.
That is hot ice cream that I think everyone in the room would love. Kyla, I can't thank you enough for your presence and your eloquence and your stuff too. I've had a great time. School's out. Thank you all for coming. Thank these amazing artists.
Thank you, guys.
But big part. Oh, everyone's going to come up. Everybody come up, please. Kirk. Oh, Kirk is back. Take 6. Oh, we have 10 more minutes. So we have 10 more minutes. I thought we were out of time. I was looking.
Well, all right.
All right, Finn. Everyone stay right here.
I have enjoyed you thoroughly.
Well, I've enjoyed you.
I'm putting more chairs.
Please, everybody come back up.
So I won't turn my back to them?
Exactly.
Okay, great.
You okay? Yeah. Oh, just great. Sit down. Everyone sit back down. Everyone sit down, please. Now, this is truly a study in anticlimax. I know, because we got to the top of that. I have not another word to say, but anybody please speak up, talk about what we've forgotten to talk about, ask what we didn't ask. We can certainly do a Q&A. So let's have a Q&A. We hadn't even thought about doing that, but let's do a Q&A. Everybody ask questions. We have a mic over here. That's the wisest thing to do. Let's have a Q&A. Question here.
You said earlier that emotion is what is missing from an Ideas Fest, and I was wondering if we could hear an a cappella song.
I know. I don't know anybody who sings a cappella.
I'll try. Maybe not a good idea.
Oh, she would like to hear something sung a cappella, you know, which I think you guys probably have done that.
Whatever you feel.
You don't want any mics.
No,
Okay.
no, what
Okay.
You want to
Okay.
put one big mic?
Just in time, changed my lonely life that lovely. Yes, sir.
Oh my God. There is
Nicely played, Alvin.
There is no way on earth to top that. Everything I was trying to say clumsily about the river of American music, everything from Julie Stein and Broadway to the blues to progressive jazz to gospel is encased right there in those sounds. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for coming. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you all for coming. And keep that in mind. Thank you again. Thank you for doing that. That is so generous of you. That was so generous and kind of you.